What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly sports history for February 1st, 2023. It is African American History Month, and I thought what I would do is take a couple minutes each day this month and give you a little bit of history when it comes to black athletes, teams that from the Negro Leagues, just different events, and basically do what I normally do, but just kind of give that black history kind of angle to it. And I mean, I know big picture, it's not going to change much in what's going on in the country with the divide. And a lot of times it's long racial divides for obvious reasons. And I think we need to all work to get better at that. And I'm not having any kind of, oh, I'm going to solve the world's problem. But what I strive to do on this podcast is educate you just about the history of Philly sports. So I'm going to take the black history angle a few times this month and basically just give you what happened. And keep in mind, some of it's not pretty. If you saw, everybody knows that Jackie Robinson was the first black baseball player, broke the color barrier for the Brooklyn Dodgers in 1947. But if you saw the movie 42 with Chadwick Boseman, in Philly, it was not a very popular thing. And they kind of fought back and gave Jackie a hard time. So obviously then each team had their own first black player that broke the color line for that team. In Philadelphia, they were the last team to actually integrate. And it was a full 10 years later that they had their first black player. And it definitely was not a love Disney story, to be honest. But John Kennedy was the first black player to play for the Phillies. He was only on the team for 10 days, which it's frustrating because his contract was bought from the Kansas City Monarchs, the same team that Jackie Robinson played for. And he actually had a great spring training and looked like he was going to be the starting shortstop for the Phillies. And everybody expected, the media members, the teammates, they loved him. But then they went out and traded for someone who ended up starting opening day. And part of the rationale or reason behind it, or his family thinks, was because he was a very outspoken player. Where Jackie Robinson, if you see the movie, like he came in and was quiet and kept to himself and didn't really fight back. Where John Kennedy was the opposite. And I think I shouldn't say I think. The theory is because he was the outspoken opposite of Jackie Robinson, the Phillies kind of got a little scared and hesitant, and that's why they went another direction. But back in 1957, John Kennedy made his debut on April 22nd as a pinch runner for the Phillies to become the first black player to play for the Phillies. Again, like I said, we're going to get more into different things throughout the month, but it's not always going to be a pretty thing when it comes to race sports in Philly, as we're going to see as we kind of go through the month. So stay tuned for more of that as we go through the month. But John Kennedy was the first black player to play for the Phillies, and he made his debut as a pinch runner on April 22nd back in 1957, which was a full 10 years after Jackie Robinson had played. All right. So, Eagles Super Bowl update. Landon Dickerson hyperextended his elbow against the 49ers, but all signs are pointing to he's going to be fine and he's going to play in the Super Bowl. Really, that's the only big injury news. Like, they haven't really practiced much and released anything. Probably going to see more of that today. Haven't really heard much from Kansas City side either. Not that I've really been looking, but we'll get more into that as the week closer to the end of the week once they start traveling and we see sort of who's practicing, who's not. But for the most part, the Eagles should be relatively healthy going into this game. You got Jalen another 2 weeks to rest that shoulder. So things should be good from an injury standpoint for the Eagles. It was announced that they are going to wear the midnight green jerseys, which I don't know. I don't really subscribe too much into that. I mean, I think they look better. Maybe, I don't know if they had the choice to wear the black ones. That would have been the only option. But they have worn green jerseys in all 4 Super Bowls. So it's not even like you can say, oh, well, they're undefeated in Super Bowls with the green jerseys versus the white. They wore green in all of them with the white pants, except for they wore the silver pants back in Super Bowl 15. So not too much of that, but I think it looks better. It's more appealing on TV. for some reason, I like the green jerseys, the way they look as opposed to the white. So there's that. That was the big story yesterday. But today in Philly sports history, we're going to go back to 1968. And on February 1st, 1968, the Flyers snapped a losing streak to the when they tied the Oakland Seals at the Spectrum. It did bring their record to 21, 19, and 8, but it stopped. I think it was like a 4-game winless streak. Now, this was important because this was the Flyers' inaugural season, and they did finish with a sub-500 record, 31, 32, and 11, but that was good enough to win the West Division, and I think there was a big influx of expansion teams in the late 60s, the Flyers being one of them, so they all sort of just went, I think, into like a West Division. Like, I'm not really sure how they decided that. Obviously, they switched it up and whatnot. But the Flyers did win that division by a point over the LA Kings. They lost in the quarterfinals in their first ever playoff round in 7 games to the St. Louis Blues. It would take them until the 72-73 season to even win a playoff series. But it was interesting because they did not know this. I thought they did a contest and the Flyers won. But Ed Snyder's sister is the one that came up with the idea for the Flyers. And apparently she got the idea of seeing a Broadway show. And I don't know what stemmed that. But Ed Snyder immediately loved it because it matched, he said, the speed of hockey. And it kind of phonetically went well with Philadelphia. So the Philadelphia Flyers. The rest is history. And like we said, like, this was their first year. They were getting it. Like, they made the playoffs. They won their division, the first ever season for the Flyers. It would be another 10 years or 8 years, I guess, before they would win a Stanley Cup. But the Oakland Seals, by the way, if you're wondering, they became later the California Golden Seals, moved to Cleveland to become the Barons in 1976, and then 2 years later, they're done. So it's not like they moved here to be this team. They're done. And I always that's something that always interests me too, is seeing the history of teams' names and everything like that. But on this day, back in 1968, the Flyers, during their inaugural season, tied the Oakland Seals 3-3 down at the Spectrum. They would go on to make the playoffs. Injury news looking good for the Eagles. Wanted to make sure we gave a shout out, and everybody knows the name John Kennedy, who was the first black player to cross the color barrier and play for the Phillies. As I said, as we get more into the month of February, we're going to see, while there will be some very good things that we're going to celebrate, the history of race and players and sports in Philadelphia, it's not always a positive one. I want to make sure we're giving both sides, and I'm not being woke or anything, just making sure I'm giving you both sides and accurate information on what happened. So stay tuned for that as we go. Go have yourselves a Wednesday. My mood, nothing can just bring me down this week. I feel like I'm walking on a high. And, I mean, I was watching Madden simulations of the Super Bowl last night, which, by the way, the Eagles won. But it is what it is. It's Super Bowl 2 weeks. Enjoy it. Go have a Wednesday, and until next time, I'll see you when I see you.